I say let's begin the workshop. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. This is going to be very similar to the input workshop that we had a little while back, in that I'm kind of playing by ear. I've got a couple things planned, but like UI is just something that like I've done in the past. It's something that I'm kind of familiar with, and so I'm just gonna. Oh boy, let me open up the chat in the. Hello, let me see chat. Let me see. I'm not going to be able to see chat. Thank you, thank you, Zoom. UI is something that I've kind of just done in the past, and I'm familiar with it, and so I'm just going to kind of run through it and hopefully teach you guys some of the things that I've learned over time. And if you have any questions, if you have any things that you want to look into specifically, we can talk about that after the main thing that I've planned. And hopefully that sounds good to everyone. And if nope, chat still doesn't. There we go. There we go. I can see chat now. So if you guys put anything in there, I can respond. But anyways, so what we've got here is this little thing that I've made. It's just a simple start menu. When you press options, it brings up an options menu. When you press play, it goes to the scene that the game would be in. And then in the options menu, you also have these buttons that change a setting. And the number isn't connected to anything, but if you wanted to, you could connect this number to, like, let's say volume, or maybe screen brightness or resolution. And that would do that. It would change it. And so today is mostly going to be focused on how to manipulate UI elements, create UI elements, and just get something working. So everyone should start a new Unity project, or however you've been doing it with the workshops this year. I'm just going to create a new scene in this existing project since I have no need to create a new project. I'm just naming the scene test. And in my empty scene, there should only be the main camera and the directional light. The first thing that I'm going to say that everyone should do is make sure that they have a certain package installed. So if you go to Window, where is it? Package Manager, Unity Registry, and then type in TextMesh. You want to make sure that you have the TextMeshPro package installed. You don't need to update it. You just need to make sure that it is currently in your project, because TextMeshPro is essentially a much better version of the text that you can have in the Unity UI system. Whereas normal, I'm just going to do this as a quick example. If I do text here, you can see it like right there. Oh, of course I can't do that. I'm going to switch that to 2D. There we go. It's much better. You can see there's the text, but like it's pretty basic. Well, without TextMesh, you only have like the Arial font. You can't do like outlines or shadows or anything like that. It's super lame, and we're not lame people, so we're going to use TextMesh. So once TextMeshPro is in your packages, you should be able to right-click, go to UI. So right-click in the hierarchy, go to UI, and then you can do like TextMeshPro. If someone doesn't see that, please say so in the chat. I'm going to click that. I'm going to assume that everyone sees that. Cool. So the TextMeshPro text that we just put in here is much cooler than the normal text. For starters, we have multiple fonts. Also, I'm pretty sure when you do this for the first time, it's going to be like, you don't have certain TextMeshPro things installed. Just press yes, I want those things, and they should all get installed. But you can see there's multiple fonts that you can use. You can do Roboto, Oswald, Liberation, all of these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fonts. I think I'm just going to stick with Liberation for now. You can change the font size, the alignment, and then down here you can do things like outline, which will give you an outline around your text. You can do underlay, which, if you expand that, will give you a bit of a shadow. And so you can choose to offset the X position, the Y position. You can dilate the shadow, and you can change the softness of it. So how intense you want the shadow to be. Also, yes, Alberto is correct. You can also import your own fonts if you have them on your computer. With TextMesh, they give you some basic ones, but you can also do more, of course. I'm not going to go through that whole process, but basically just in the project window, you can do import new asset, and then look, actually maybe I will go through it because I'm pretty sure I have it right here somewhere. Or not, I don't. Rip. You can just import your own fonts into Unity and then use them wherever you want. So yeah, TextMeshPro is super cool. It allows you to customize your text however you want. Moving on. Let's make the menu screen that I made before. So now that we've made text, we can turn this into like the title screen. And so here we'll do like game title 1, because this is the first game in the series. And the series is called game title. We're just gonna put the title wherever we want. I'm gonna center the text and center it vertically and horizontally. Cool. Oh, so here's something. When you create your stuff and it creates a canvas for you, this is something that I learned today, and it has solved all of my issues with this. Because something that happens, and I'm going to go back to my other scene for right now, because that's the best way to show it. You'll notice that it says constant pixel size with UI scale mode. If you look at it in the game menu, and then like you look at like different resolutions, the UI elements will get larger or bigger based on your resolution. This is especially evident on my computer when I actually launch the EXEs, because my screen is 4K. And so when we're making these things, we make them for, I think it's like a 1080p screen. And then I run it on a 4K screen, and they get super duper tiny. Yeah, I'm flexing with the 4K. It's a beautiful baby. But it gets super duper tiny, and that's a problem. So if you go to the canvas, and then in the canvas scaler component, it says constant pixel size by default. If you change it to scale with screen size, then what it will do is it will make it so that way it doesn't get super duper tiny on 4K screens. It doesn't get super big. It just kind of scales with the screen size. Make sure that screen match mode is match width or height. I recommend doing where it has like the match slider set that to 0.5. So that way it's like an equal amount of like matching the width and matching the height. The reference resolution, you might need to play around with this. I think the default value of 800, 600 is fine. At least it was for me. But I think this is a setting that you need to do at the beginning, because I believe if you make UI elements and then try to do this, it might change what the UI elements positions and scaling numbers are after the fact. That happened when I tried this with the Headless Horseman game that we made for the Game Jam. I actually, for the people that were in that team, I went ahead and I made these changes to that. And so now, like when I run Headhunt, things look normal on my screen, which is very, very nice because originally they were like super tiny and only appeared like right there. But now you can actually see the game. But I had to like change something. So make sure you make this change now. Alberto says pitch an HD aspect ratio 16:9, 720 by 1280. Yeah, and like Will said, on mobile devices, this is also super important because phone screens come in a variety of sizes. And so if you don't scale it, it's not going to play well with different users. It will only look nice for whoever you're testing it with. I'm going to save that. And so going back to our thing, I'm going to change the canvas to scale, and then I'm going to change that to 0.5. And so now the game title should look nice on any aspect ratio. So we made the text. This is going to be the title, so I'm just going to rename that title. Canvas, I'm going to add a button. So if you go to UI and then you go to button, we're going to do a normal button. Yeah, let's do a TextMeshPro button. I like that. So the button object is really nice because Unity kind of does all the heavy lifting for you. If you play after just like putting in the default button, you can see that when you click it, it grays itself, and there's like a little, it's an on-click event that automatically gets fired. And you can see it in the inspector down in here under the button component. Right now it's empty, so this means that it doesn't do anything. We'll change this very soon. So we have the button. It has its text in it. You can change the text just like you change the title text. We'll make this the play button. And then if we duplicate it and then we put one down here, we'll make this the options button. And we can rename the buttons if that makes it better. Play button, rename, options button. So now what we can do is we can give functionality to these buttons. What I recommend doing is creating a single script to handle all basic UI behavior. And for me, I call it UI behaviors. And essentially what it does is it just stores the different functions that are just like basic button UI functions. So making something appear, making something disappear, changing the scene, incrementing a number, decrementing a number. I'll go back over this code when we go through each one. But for now, we want to do the change scene script. And so I'm going to go right here. Yeah, so what you should do is in the play button, add a component, make a new script. You can call it whatever you want. I called mine UI behaviors. I'm just going to use UI behaviors there. And then what you'll, oh, that's the wrong Visual Studio. What you'll want to do is you'll want to do the change scene function that I made here. And essentially all it is it's change scene. It takes a string parameter, and the parameter, and that parameter will be the name of the scene. And then it calls scene manager.load scene, scene name. This is just the line of code that changes the scene. I do think you're going to need to do a using. You'll need to do using Unity engine.scene management up at the top. And that will let you use the scene manager. Is there anyone who fell behind there? I kind of jumped around. Feel free to write in the chat or unmute yourself if you got lost. Okay. I'll let Visual Studio load for you guys. And if you want, feel free to start making show element and hide element. This is, honestly, this is just boilerplate code. I mean, it's relatively simple stuff. Just setting a game object to active or setting it to inactive. And so that way, once we have these three functions, we can just go ahead and start attaching them to the buttons, and it'll make it nice and easy. I'm going to assume that everyone is good, cool. I'm going to head back to, does anyone still need the code? Cool. I'm going to assume no one needs the code, so I'm going back here. So now you have those three functions, set something active, set something inactive, and change the scene. So let's start with the play button first. So the play button, you'll want to give it your UI behavior script. There's multiple I should mention, there are multiple different ways that you can go about this implementation. You can give the UI behavior script to every button in your UI. You could make a single game object. This is just an example that has UI behaviors, and then you don't have to give the script to every button. It's all personal preference in how you do it. I don't know the exact like efficiency of each way. I'm just kind of like, this is what I personally do. So it's all up to you. So with that being said, if you go to the play button and you scroll down to where the on-click event appears, it says list is empty. So what you're going to want to do is you'll want to press that plus button right there. And this is the list of things that will trigger when you press the button. For the play button, we want to change the scene. So you're going to want to drag your UI behavior script over here. And you'll see that it gets filled in play button UI behaviors. It says no function. So if you click no function, and then it'll pull up like all of the components that are inside of the play button. So if you go over here and it says UI behaviors, you'll see all of the different things that UI behaviors can do. A lot of it is just like basic, how can I explain it? Component functions that are just by default in a component. But then other ones are the ones that you created. So look for the one that has to do with changing the scene. Mine is called change scene. And you'll see that it now has UI behaviors, not change scene. If your thing has a parameter, which your change scene one should, you can then put in the parameter in here. If it was a game object parameter, you would drag something over just like we've done with variables in the past. But for the string parameter, you just enter a string. So what you should do is you should create a scene in your project window, and then name it whatever. You don't have to go to that scene just yet. Just make sure that you have a second scene that you can go to. I'm not playing Breath of the Wild, but it is my, what's the word? Notification tone. No, that's the item pickup tone, yeah. But anyways, the play button down in here, my scene is called level 1, and so now what will happen is we've attached the change scene method to the play button. We've passed it the name of the scene, level 1. So what should happen is when you click the play button, you will go to level 1. However, before you can do that, you need to make sure that level, or whatever scene it is that you're traveling to, is in the build settings. So if you go to File and you go to Build Settings, you'll see the scenes that are in the build. When you create the game, these are all of the scenes that are kind of like in the executable data. Yours is probably going to be empty. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to do add open scenes. This will add the scene that you're currently in to the build. Make sure that you add your menu scene, and then you go to your level scene, and then you go to build settings, add open scenes, and you add your level scene. And then once both of those are in there, you can go back to the menu, and you can actually test the play button. So now if I press play, it brings me to level 1. Did anyone miss any of that? All right. No one is saying that they've missed it, so I'm going to keep moving on. With the play button implemented, now it's time to make the options button. So here's a fun UI tip that I've learned about recently. When you create a UI element, it also creates a canvas. The canvas stores all of the UI elements that you have, right? And if you wanted to, you can make all of your UI elements in a single canvas. So our options menu that appears, we could put it in the same canvas as all of this. And then when you press the options button, it would just get rid of these objects and make the options menu appear, which is fine. But something important to note is that when you change a UI element, so like let's say you don't have to do this, but I'm just gonna give an example here. I think where's the input field? Where's the input field? There we go. You have this input field, right? And then when we play, and then we type things in the input field, this input field is updated, right? And so what happens in the backside where Unity is running is it has to update the UI element that just got updated, the input field, right? The way it updates it updates everything that is inside of the canvas of that UI element. So if you store all of your UI elements under one canvas, that means all of your UI elements get updated when you only update one of them. So for things like player stats, if you have a bunch of stats and only one stat gets updated, Unity redraws all of the UI, even though only one of them got changed. And that can be very, very inefficient. You're not going to see much of that with this example because we're only making like, 5 elements? But in the future, it's just something to kind of keep in mind. And so I've started to get into the habit of making multiple canvases. I'm not sure how clear that came across. I hope that was understandable for everyone. But basically what it boils down to is for all of your UI elements that are like major elements, make a different canvas for each one because that's more efficient. Yeah. So with the new canvas, what you'll want to do is you'll want to change that canvas scalar again. I don't know why it says that. Okay, cool. So change the canvas scalar, 0.5. And we're going to use the second canvas as the options menu. And so we're going to hide this one. I don't want that. And this one, we are going to create another text item. And your options menu, you can look however you want. If you want a title thing, you can do a title thing. If not, you don't have to. The most important things to have, I would say right now, is just a back button. So you're going to want to also create UI button, TextMeshPro button. Back button. Cool. So now we have a button that would lead us to the options menu and a button that will lead us back to the main menu. So we're going to hide the options menu canvas first. Because when you start the game, you would want to see the main menu, not the options menu. And then in the options button, we are going to add our UI behaviors, or however you're doing it, drag the UI behaviors over into the onClick, and then call your, where is it? The show element function first. And the element that we're going to want to show is the canvas that holds the options menu. And then we're going to want to add another one because we're going to want two things to happen. We want to show an element and we want to hide an element. And the element that we're going to hide is the canvas for the main menu. And I'll rename them so it pops up a little easier. And so you'll show the options canvas and you'll hide the main menu canvas. I'm not sure if the order matters. I'm doing it this way because if it does matter, and like by hiding the main menu canvas, you make the options button inactive, which would mean the second thing doesn't get triggered. I'm not sure. If someone wants to try it, go ahead. If you want to like rearrange how these are, that's cool with me. Let me know if that works or not. But yeah, so now we've got the options button should be working. I'll test it now once that thing goes away. There we go. If you press options, boom, options menu pops up, the other menu goes away. So now let's do the back button, add a component, UI behaviors, put the UI behaviors in there. And then you'll want to do hide element. Oh, or show element, hide element. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Menu canvas, options canvas. Does this work? Oh, it does work. Okay, cool. You can do it in any order you want. So now you have an options menu and a main menu, and you can flip back and forth between them. And the play button, that enters the game for you. So is there anyone that missed any of that? Should I go back? Let me know. I'll wait a little bit. Okay. How do you get it so options canvas starts hidden again? So in the options canvas, there's a little checkbox right here in the inspector. That's your, excuse me, that's the active checkbox. Yeah, just click that. When something is inactive, it'll be grayed out in the hierarchy. And essentially what we're doing with our show element, hide element, is we are getting this checkbox and we're just changing it when the button gets clicked. And you can even see it in the hierarchy. When you press the button, they change between gray and white. Luke, let me know when I should keep going or if you want me to go over anything again. For this next step, I'm just going to start by having the main menu canvas hidden and the options canvas visible. Yeah, cool. So in the options canvas, what we're going to do is now we are going to do the increment decrement little setting that I showed you guys earlier. So in here, we are going to create 2 buttons and a text element. And so under UI, button, and we're gonna move that like right there. UI, or I just duplicate that one. Button. I want this one to be kind of like a rectangular or a square button. So 70/70. Change that. And then in the text for the buttons, I'm just going to use the less than and the greater than signs as like little arrows. And so these will be our decrement and increment buttons, and I'll rename them so it's easy to tell. Increment button. Cool. And then in addition to those buttons, we are going to create text, and then this text is going to be the little number that's in between them. I'm going to set it to 0 for now, so that way that's the default. Let's see, what is this? Okay, so that is the color of the text. I'm going to set it in the center, and then I'm going to. Okay, so what you'll want to make sure of when you do this, it's going to be kind of hard to see. Actually, this will be easier to see. When you resize it, if you resize it using like this yellow box, you'll notice there's like a faint box outside of it. This is the actual bounds of the rect transform. If you move this back and forth, you'll actually see that the width doesn't changes. This is a problem when you start messing around with things that overlap things, because if you put this up here, what will happen is even if you move it like that, where like this is not touching anything, this gray box is overlapping the button. And so if you try to click here, it's going to be a dead zone. So instead of just changing the yellow box, you're going to want to change the whole width. So just change that to like 100 and then put that in between. I like that, and 25. All right, there we go. Cool. And so now I've got this. I'm going to rename that number. And so now you have buttons. Oh, I just lost that. Cool. So now you have the two buttons and you have the number in the middle. And now it's time to make the decrement and increment functions. So if you look down here, this is all in UI behaviors, so you can continue using the flow that you've been doing before. Increment num and decrement num are these things. What you'll have to do first before you can use tmp_text is you'll have to do using TMPro up here when you do all your other usings. That way you can actually access this text object. So if you just want to add that code into UI behaviors, we can work off of that. And to explain what this does, increment num will take in the text object that we are changing. So that number text box that we made, that's the parameter that it will take in. We're going to get, we are going to parse the text in that text box to turn it into an integer. And this, as it is right now, is a little bit unsafe because we're not doing like if int.parse equals int. But honestly, I don't care enough that to do that. So we're just gonna run with this. As long as you're doing things correctly, this should be fine. But we get the thing that's in the text box as an integer. Right now it's a string. You gotta parse it into an int. Then we are going to increment that number, and then we are going to change the text in that text box to the number that you just incremented. And then decrement is the same thing, just with minus minus. Tony brought up that you can do int.tryParse. And so if you do that and then numText.text, that will return a bool. And so if you did like if that, you could then do that. And that's a safer way to do it. Second parameter is a reference int. All right, well, I don't feel like going through that, but that's essentially the way that you would go around and make sure that's safe. I'm very, just type out int num. Oh, okay, so int num. Gotcha, and so you could do that. Right? No? Okay. New int num. Gotcha. Okay, so this is the way to do it safely. Or you can be not safe and you can just straight up do this. Totally up to you. I'll leave it alone like that. And so I'm going to assume everyone has the code because I've been there for a little while. Update. Cool. So in increment and decrement button, now you're just going to do the UI behaviors. And just like before, you add one thing there. For the decrement, I'll start with the decrement button, drag that over, change the function, go to UI behaviors, do decrement num, and you'll see that it's looking for a TextMeshPro text parameter. Just drag number over there, and then we'll get the TextMeshPro text from that. Do the same for increment, add component, UI behaviors, but do it with increment num, number. There we go. And so then when you start this, what should happen is it decrements there, increments there. Yeah, Tony brought up how the keyword out works for things that use that as parameters. So that's a good thing to mention in the chat. Thank you. Cool. So now you've got this, and then like I mentioned, you can use this to tie it to actual settings in the game. So like, let's say this had to do with volume. You would have another script that gets the number here, just like how we did it here. And then we convert that number to the actual setting. So we change the volume with that number. Yeah, and that's just how you can have a UI system that lays on top of an actual system that works. Cool. It's giving me an error. So Jack, do you have using TM-Pro up top? There you go. Yep. Yeah, this is how you can get references to all of the TextMeshPro stuff. And if you weren't using TextMeshPro, like let's say you wanted to use like just Unity's base text system, you could use, oh wait, oh yeah. So you would do text instead of TMP_text, and you would have to do using Unity engine.ui to use that. But we like TextMeshPro, so we're just going to use that. There we go. Cool. I think I want to say that's everything I did for the most part. I can go over a couple other UI elements. One of the elements is a panel. And so let me do it in the test scene. So in main menu canvas, you can create UI panel. And so this is just essentially a rectangle that allows you to store things inside of it. I think that's the way it works. So important thing to note about the hierarchy and things appearing in front of another thing. The objects that are higher up in the hierarchy will appear further back in the UI. So now the panel is behind the title. If I move it right here, it's now in front of the title. When I move it right here, it's in front of the buttons. And it may, I'm assuming, affect, I can't press the buttons now because the panel is in front of them. So just make sure you don't do that on accident. If things can't be pressed, that is probably why. So a panel is very useful for making a background. When you just put the panel into the canvas, it'll spread out to be the width and height of the screen. And because we're doing the scaling thing, it will stretch with aspect ratios. You can change the color of this panel. So if you want dark, if you want light, that's how you get different backgrounds. Change the alpha. Yeah. What a lot of people do is they will do, hold on, let me do this. A panel, and then they will stick this stuff inside of that panel. And so you have, hold on. I don't like that. Hold on a moment. I'm messing around with this. Actually, that's a bad way for me to have started with that. We're gonna move this outside of it. Media background models, click transparent, the background transparent. No idea. That's not the way. Right now I'm just messing with stuff because I don't fully know everything about the UI system. I'm just kind of seeing what works and what doesn't. I can go over some of the stuff in here. I guess that would probably be a good idea. Yeah. So in the rect transform, we're going to leave all this 1, 1, 1. You'll notice that there's stuff like left, top, right, bottom. This essentially is just the, that's how you resize. Okay, cool. That is just the coordinates of things when you mess around with resizing. When you look over here, this, I try not to mess around with this too much because this is some witchcraft that may or may not break things. But the important thing to note is that when it looks like this, it means that it's stretching outwards for as much as it can. If you were to change the left and right values in the rect transform, that will give kind of like an offset for the left and right bounds of the thing that you're changing. So with this panel, I did the left and the right as 100, and you'll see there's like, I think it's 100 pixels to the left and to the right. And then let me see what it looks like when I mess around with resolutions. Yeah, everything continues to scale perfectly fine. And you can mess around with this, so that way something like that, 800, let's do 600, 500, 600, top 150, and bottom 10. So now we have like a little side menu inside of the larger menu. 10. And then in this panel, if you wanted to do UI button, you could then do buttons and stuff inside of the panel. And so if you wanted like this submenu to disappear, you could focus on, when you do your show element hide element, you can do it on this panel as opposed to like a separate canvas. Does Unity have an XML-based UI? I honestly have no idea, Tony. I'm going to go off on a limb and say no, but it's always possible, I guess. Also, I'm appreciating the talk about Age of Calamity in the chat. I'm very much looking forward to that game. So, but yeah, is there anything? There's really not much else I had planned. Do we want to do the break? Did we come up with a breakout room game? Oh, I like that one. Okay. So this is helpful. And actually I can kind of show that. This is something that I made over the summer break.
There's a link in the chat.
Say what? Yeah, Will posted an XML thing in the chat. But like this is something that I made over break. It's a and I'll dive a little bit into this because I personally think this is like some good programming practices in here. It is just ignore the fact with the scaling. I don't understand scaling. It's a party system. And so you can have like active party members with equipment and attacks and reserve attacks. And you can create different equipment things like lightsaber, attack.
That's scaling though.
Yeah, just ignore the scaling. Just ignore that.
True.
But yeah, the way it all works is that the party system itself works by itself. And this is kind of the way I recommend thinking about like scripting in general. Treat this like a Java project where everything is in the console. And so everything needs to just kind of work with each other by themselves without any UI elements working with it. And you can even see here, like every step is documented in there. And then just use the UI elements to kind of interact with it with the UI behaviors in the UI manager. And then just reflect this system in the UI as opposed to making the UI an integral part of the party system itself.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that came across correctly. That was confusing, let me know.